Alright, y'all, welcome back again. I'm just going to start getting set up a little bit. We've already chopped a couple of items, so that's why my cutting board is a little messy. But I'm going to go ahead and place our seasonings. So, this time we are going to, as usual, we got black pepper. Just make sure y'all can see that. So we have black pepper. We're also going to be making the Mediterranean, so I want to use parsley. And make sure we have our salt. I like to use Himalayan pink salt, but you can use whatever salt works for you. If you hear a little humming in the background, that is my microwave as I am defrosting. And I've already chopped up celery and cucumber for my snacks this week. I'm also boiling eggs. Every week is pretty much the same for me for snack prep, but you can feel free to mix it up. So sometimes you may want fruit, so like blueberries. Or something of that nature. So, you can use fruits, you can use vegetables, whatever works for you. So, as I mentioned, I am doing a couple of pre-made things this week. So, if you do have a Trader Joe's near you, or you can make a pork belly, I just bought the fully cooked one from Trader Joe's. And so, this actually won't take much prepping. And this can actually be just browned. And it needs to be defrosted too. So I'm going to go ahead and defrost that with my ground beef. And also my cauliflower, because that was also frozen. So go ahead and put that in there. Okay. Zero, start. Okay. Alexa, play Christmas radio on camera. Alexa, play jazz with the beat by before. Alexa, play lo-fi. Okay. Alright, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started with getting the oven warmed up. So let's start with making our Alfredo pizza. So this is going to be really easy in that this pizza can have whatever you want on it. So I am probably going to do, let's see, I want mushrooms. I always want onions, and broccoli. So, and then the Alfredo sauce. So this is Monogore creamy Alfredo. You can also make Alfredo if you'd like. I am not, but you can do that if you'd like. Just using heavy cream and seasoning and sauteing it for a bit if you want to make Alfredo sauce. I'm also going to use garlic for this one. And you want to treat it like you would if you were making Alfredo pasta. And I'm also going to use spinach and mozzarella. So let's start with that. And then we'll move along to the meatballs and our cauliflower. So, alright, let's get started here. So, for me, I literally like to add as much green as I can to my Alfredo. So I'm going to do broccoli. And you want to rinse this all off before you get started. And I'm just going to cut off the stalks, and it doesn't, for me, the broccoli doesn't have to be really tiny. I kind of like some chunks on my pizza, but if you don't, you can cut it down to your liking. I'm also going to preheat the oven to 350, and for me, I'm going to use my cast iron skillet just because I like the way that it cooks. So I'll be using that, but you don't have to use that. So we have the broccoli. I also need an onion, a yellow onion. You could also, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to use the red onion just because that's kind of the theme for the foods that we're making today. So I will continue with just using red onion. But you can use yellow onion. Actually, I'm more of a fan of yellow onion, but I'm going to just, like I said, use the red because that's kind of where we are today. But you can use whatever works for you. So I'm just going to do a slice here. And then I'm just going to dice it. And like I said, you can make this chunky if you'd like as well. I'm not, but you can if you'd like to. And in honor of it being vegetarian kind of celebration cooking all on social media, you can leave out the chicken if you'd like. I'm going to put some in just because I'm kind of on a more higher protein. I have some higher protein dietary needs right now. So I am going to add some chicken since I can't do other things like beans. But you could do essentially a white bean if you'd like. If you're trying to do protein but you want to keep it vegetarian, you could do that as well. I just had leftover rotisserie chicken that I want to use up, so I'm going to use that. But you definitely don't need meat for this recipe. So keep that in mind. So a lot of these things are just suggestions, and you can feel free to substitute however you see fit. That's kind of the therapeutic part of this. You get to choose what goes in. We're giving you kind of an outline and suggestions, but this is an opportunity to let your preferences shine here, since it's your occasion, right? So, onions, I'm just going to rinse out the mushrooms since they're already sliced, and then garlic. So, after you finish basting all your ingredients and getting them prepped, you're going to want to make the crust next. So my crust is really easy. I'm just going to use the almond flour and some water and mix that together. So I would say it really depends on how wide your base items are. So, or your pan, I'm sorry, is to determine how much almond flour you're going to actually use. But for me, I'm probably going to use about 1.5 cups. And then I'm just going to put enough water to kind of be able to make a mixture out of it. Because that's going to be our crust, so it doesn't need a ton of water. But you do want to make sure it's a good amount so that it doesn't taste floury, right? It becomes actually kind of a dough. So. And I realize I'm not making it in the typical traditional way because we're meal prepping. There's a lot of different foods we're making here. So perhaps if I was just making one meal today, I might make it in the traditional way and let the dough rise and kind of flip it and that would be great. So if you have more time, I really encourage you to do that if you'd like. Just for me this time, it's more about the time, right? So I want to make sure that we're trying to keep this in under an hour, or no more than 60 minutes if we can, keep it if we can. So I'm not going to do the extra with the dough, but you can if you'd like. Nothing's wrong with giving your dough a little more TLC. And I would recommend for the garlic, if you have one of those, I don't even know what they're called, but they're sleeves essentially. it can help get the skin off the garlic so you don't have these bits and pieces like I do. But it's okay. We are striving for progress here, not imperfection. So for those of you who are new to joining us, thank you for joining. We are still pretty new. I think this is our second week doing this. So feel free to let us know if there's any recipes you'd like to see. We try to keep it according to certain themes. But we also want to make sure that you know that certain foods can be really good for you. So most people know broccoli is good for you. But also garlic is really good for you. So I like to cook with a lot of anti-inflammatory things because I found that the less inflamed my body is, the better I feel mentally as well. So garlic is just really good all the way around for that. And then onion also. So finding ways to incorporate a lot of vegetables is really not only going to help you get nutrients, but can also help your body fight off any potential diseases or anything of that nature. So I heard someone say today, you know, we can overfeed ourselves and still be undernourished. And I think that's entirely true. I remember before I started my weight loss journey, I really struggled with that, in which I ate a lot, but it felt like I was never actually full. And the truth of the matter was I wasn't giving my body what it needed. So that was the reason why I never quite felt like, oh, this is really the food I need to eat, because I'm still craving nutrients. Since I started eating this way, I've noticed that my appetite, I'm not as hungry usually. So that tells me that what I really needed was nutrients. And so I eat when I'm hungry, but because my body is now knows that it's going to get its nutrients, it's not as much of a press for it. So just something to think about. You know, are you overfed or underfed and undernourished? And if so, what vitamins might you be missing in your life? For this, I always recommend, if you can, talking to a licensed dietitian or nutritionist and getting their take on it. So I'm just mixing up the water and the almond flour. And I'm going to do this one thin crust. Sometimes I'll do thick. But since I'm doing thin crust, I really don't need a lot. I'm just going to make sure it covers the bottom of the pan. And you'll want to oil the pan before you do that so that it doesn't stick. And since I'm really making this as therapeutic as possible, I use my hand. But you can use, to mix it up, but you can use like beaters or anything of that nature too. And if you want it to have cheese in it, you can do that. I used to love going to like Pizza Hut or something and getting the crust that had the mozzarella built in. So you could do that as well. It's really up to you here. But before we put the ingredients in, we want to make sure we get that at least browned a little bit. So I'm going to put that in the oven for a second. I would say probably no more than 10 minutes. Okay. So that's 10 minutes. Meanwhile, I am going to go ahead and make my my cauliflower tacos. So here you'll just want a saucepan. You all can see that. And you want your cauliflower to go down to kind of like almost looking like meat. So you'll probably want to process that. So I'm going to go ahead and plug up my food processor and try to ground this. So, and for this one, I'm going to use half a head of cauliflower. You can use more if you'd like, but half a head is probably going to give you 4 servings on this because remember, it's going to break down. So you don't need a ton because it's probably going to break down. Like I said, it's gonna break down. Now, another good thing to do with the cauliflower is because it is mostly water, you may want to, especially if you froze it, defrost it in the fridge the night before, or also try to get as much of the water out as possible. Maybe use a paper towel or kind of squeeze it out. Just because it kind of helps, but you can, because it's going to be sauteing, it's not that big of a deal, but it can help also to kind of pat it dry. So I'm almost done with my half a head. Okay, got half a head of cauliflower. Like I said, cauliflower is so versatile to me. It's just really great to have. In my opinion. So I try to find as many ways to utilize it as possible because it also cooks so easily too. You know, with meat, you have to make sure it's completely done often and that takes time, but cauliflower doesn't take that much time as most vegetables. So for me, it's kind of like a win-win. First of all, like a head of cauliflower where I am is like maybe $2 max. So, or you can get it already frozen for like $3 and chopped and all of that, diced and rice and all that. So I just find for me it works beautifully. So it just keeps things easier. And it also tastes great. And I also feel better eating it. Like I was having yesterday the leftover tabbouleh salad that we made last week with cauliflower, and that was amazing. So I would suggest you use a skillet for this. I did not use a skillet, but a skillet could be very useful. So keep that in mind. So there's the rice cauliflower. And a skillet would be good because you can probably do a nice even layer so that you can make sure your seasoning is mixed properly. So to give it kind of like that meaty kind of feel, I'm going to use, what am I going to use? Actually, I'm going to use some dark chocolate. And I'm also going to crush some almonds. So you can buy the walnuts already chopped. I have from Trader Joe's their raw California halves and pieces. So I'm going to just go ahead using my processor again. Find my blade. Or you don't have to use your blade. You could just use your hand. Or, there it is. But yeah, you don't have to. There we go. So we're going to put the nuts in here. Just get them extra fine like you would the cauliflower as well. And the walnuts are just going to give you that texture, that meaty kind of crunch that we kind of associate with meat sometimes. So, I'm going to process that one. Okay. kind of what it looks like when you ground it. So there we are. I'm going to go ahead and mix that with the cauliflower. And I have, my candle burning. I have my water. Make sure you have a drink for yourself. And also feel free to play your favorite kind of music. I love cooking with like jazz or lo-fi beats. But you can cook with rock, you can cook with R&B, you can cook with hip hop, whatever works for you. I find different moods work better for me. If I'm really working in my creative zone, then I probably have on hip hop or R&B. If I'm just working in general, I probably have pop on or something of that nature. But when I'm cooking, it's definitely, for me, the jazz or the lo-fi beats. So you'll also want to get ready to season. So for this, like I said, I have unsweetened cocoa powder. So I'm not going to go wild with this. I'll probably put about half a cup, if even that, in there. Because it's really more for the coloring, but it does give it a nice taste as well. And then finally, you want to give it some spice. So you can add some onion here if you'd like, or some jalapeno peppers. I am going to add cayenne pepper. When I find my cayenne pepper. You could also add some turmeric. So I'm thinking I probably will, considering that I don't think we're doing anything else that involves having turmeric. And I like to have something with turmeric. I also take supplements for turmeric just because it's really great. It's a good anti-inflammatory for me. So, and I know we've been talking a lot about that. I'm probably going to continue to talk about that. But also, for coloring too, it's helpful. So, you're going to go ahead and mix that together and just kind of let it brown. I would also suggest that you have some kind of olive oil nearby, because as it browns, you may see that it's kind of drying out a bit. So you can add more oil, but mine was frozen, so there's actually plenty of moisture within that itself. And so, just going to keep on, make sure your flame isn't too high. Doesn't need to be super high. This is not meat, this is cauliflower. So cayenne pepper, black pepper, you can use garlic salt if you'd like. You'll want to use some kind of nuts for the crunch if you'd like. I use walnuts, crushed walnuts. Then you have your cauliflower, your riced cauliflower here. And all of that. So I can kind of show you what mine is a little more mushy because it was frozen, but this is kind of where we're getting into the meaty aspect. It kind of looks like ground beef, but I assure you, there is no ground beef. That is all cauliflower. And so you can use this in kind of making a chili. If you'd like, you can use it for tacos. I've used this for hamburgers. In fact, what I may do, since this is 4 servings and I'm only actually going to probably want to eat that twice this week, I may put some away and freeze it so that I can have burgers. We can do burgers next week. So, just something to think about. If you are doing that, make sure you kind of put it in something that's pretty airtight. So, for me, I can't have my tacos without my guacamole. So, while that's going, I'm also going to work on my guacamole. So we got 2 avocados, cilantro, green onions, lime, jalapeno. That's kind of my go-to. You can add tomatoes if you'd like. I'm not, but you can if you like. And then after this, we'll pickle onions. And then that'll really be it for our tacos. So, I like like to leave the seed in the bowl. I feel like it keeps the avocado fresher longer. And I also like to pick avocados that are pretty soft. If you get ones that are hard, they're not super ripe. And that can be difficult, especially when you're doing something like guacamole that's often smashed, right? So save yourself. Try to make it as easy for yourself as possible and try to get some avocado that's a little soft already. And this is almost still too ripe for me, but it is coming out easily, so we'll go with that. Like I said, I like to layer, but today I think actually I'm just going to mix it all together. You could do one layer onion and then mix so that you get an even coating. I always actually recommend that instead of what I'm doing today. But like I said, I'm doing this a little bit because last week's video was pretty long, so I'm trying to just see if we can shorten things a little bit. But like I said, there are always options here. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. Maybe you know a better way to manage the avocados and all of that. And feel free to share your ideas here. You know, this is a community. So, you know, I'm just sharing what I've kind of learned over the years. But if you all have other ideas too, please feel free to share them. So, I'm going to get rid of this avocado because it's kind of everywhere. And if your crust is still baking, you may want to check and make sure it's when it gets even a little bit solid, we're good because we're going to cook it more later anyway. So, jalapeno, dicing my jalapeno. Folks, and I used to really love eating out on the weekends, so that's why I wanted to give you all a couple of frozen options that make you think like you're eating out. So that's why, you know, if you're on a budget and you're saying I'm really trying not to eat out as much, but I really like just, it's my ritual on weekends to feel like I'm having something a little different. Think about what you'd like to cook and get just frozen items of it. I like to kind of have my adult kids meals, right? So next week I'll probably show you all how to do like chicken nuggets and stuff of that nature, making your own. Of course, you can always buy those. But like today, we're going to do like fish sticks using the air fryer. So there are other things you can do as well. Excuse me. But, you know, that kind of stuff, or I'll do like soup and salad. Last week we did a soup, so I'm going to skip this week for soup. But next week, definitely want to go back to doing our soup and salads. You know, or like the pizza. I probably won't have the pizza until the weekend. So the weekend and the frozen items will probably be my weekend foods. But the important thing is you're kind of paying attention to what you really like about it, right? So I got 2 green onions here. That's really important. Is it that you like the ambience of eating out, you know? Can you create that for yourself at home? Usually, you know, places might have candlelit tables, things of that nature. And that's something you can do at home. Do you find that one restaurant seasons their food really well? Okay. Can you learn more about seasonings and the flavorings they use? Or even just keep it as it is and say, you know what, I can treat myself maybe once a month. Because there is something about not only supporting business owners and all of that, but also it's something really nice about having someone serve you sometimes and trying different flavors and meals that you wouldn't have thought of and giving yourself a break from cooking yourself. So, I'm going to mash this all together. And like I said, this doesn't have to be perfect. The reason why I do this way is not to show that I'm such a messy cook, but to show that I am a very human being here. Like, you know, sometimes I have lots of time to do this. And I'll really work to see, okay, how can I do this and keep it really neat and all of that. But for me, it's more about the process and just letting myself be, not judging myself in this process. So I hope that you also are not judging yourself here. I let you all see kind of the really messy side here because I hope that gives you permission to also do that. You know, of course, clean up afterwards, right? But sometimes we just need to allow ourselves to be a little messy. So there you go. I have some sriracha red pepper that I'm going to use here. But you can use cayenne pepper and red pepper too. And lime juice and cilantro. So I think I actually have a lime that we were using last week that I'm going to use again. Oh, yep, I sure do. You can also put this on your meat if you'd like, which I might actually. And I just find guacamole is just great, period. Like if I have some cucumber slices, I'll eat that. If I have some of my flaxseed crackers, I'll also use that as a snack. So it's a great condiment, but it's also a great snack to just have on hand. So if you say, hey, I want to do this more often, I want to make sure I have avocado or guacamole as part of my weekly snack prep, then go for it. Your meat is probably done now. I'm just going to stir it again because I still see some white. But once it starts sticking, it's probably done. So, oh, and cilantro. How did I forget the cilantro? And then that's going to be it for the guacamole. Like I said, you can add tomatoes or onions if you'd like. I'm not going for Chipotle style guacamole, so this is going to be sufficient for me, but you can do whatever makes sense for you. Maybe you don't like cilantro, so don't put it in there. You know, like, you know, whatever works for you is great. And sometimes I find one day I want just basic guacamole, another day I want to gas it up. So it's really great to just have a container available so that you know you have the base, and if you want to switch it up a little more, add more ingredients, you know, you can do that as well. But that's it for the guac here. And I love the color and the smoothness of it. It's beautiful here. So yeah, so that's our guac. And okay. I'm trying to find my links.